The night began like any other in Wiley, Texas. Quiet streets, distant crickets, the hum of neon from a nearby gas station. But just before 10 p.m., the silence broke. Police scanners erupted across Collin County. Possible break-in at Collinsboro's Jeep. Alarms active, unknown movement inside. For locals, that name meant something. Collinsboro's Jeep wasn't just another auto shop. It was an institution, a fortress of chrome and horsepower, home to some of the rarest Jeeps and muscle cars ever restored. Dennis Collins had built it brick by brick, car by car, until it became one of the most respected collections in the country. So when sirens started wailing toward the facility, people noticed. Witnesses described chaos, floodlights flaring to life, shadows darting behind the windows, and then a low, concussive sound that rattled windows 3 blocks away. One neighbor said it sounded like an explosion. Others swore they saw smoke curling from the roofline before police arrived. Officers entered cautiously, guns drawn, expecting a robbery or a gas leak. Instead, what they found was something that didn't fit any report they'd ever written. The main showroom was dark, yet the security systems were still running. The smell of fuel and heated metal hung heavy in the air. On one of the walls, a row of framed photographs. Dennis with Carol Shelby, Dennis with Richard Rawlings, Dennis smiling beside million-dollar cars. All rattled slightly in their frames from the shock wave that had hit the building. Outside, police cars lined the gravel lot as investigators moved in. A few techs from the fire department whispered about a possible chemical spill. Someone mentioned Hazmat protocols. Whatever was burning inside wasn't rubber or oil. It had a metallic bite to it, sharp enough to sting the throat. Then came the first official report over the radio. Suspicious materials located. No active fire. Securing perimeter. By the time the story hit local news an hour later, the narrative had already spun out of control. Social media buzzed with speculation. Stolen prototypes, illegal fuel experiments, even talk of federal agents arriving overnight. But the truth was stranger than any rumor. Behind those steel doors, under decades of dust and secrecy, officers had found something far too valuable and far too dangerous for any ordinary garage. And before sunrise, one thing was certain. Whatever was discovered inside Collinsboro's Jeep wasn't just going to make headlines, but it was going to rewrite them. To understand why police sirens at Collinsboro's Jeep sent shockwaves through the car world, you have to know who Dennis Collins really is. To most, he's more than just a businessman. He's a Texas legend. For over 4 decades, Dennis built his empire from nothing but busted Jeeps, rusted muscle cars, and relentless ambition. He wasn't born into money or fame. He earned it under the fluorescent lights of his garage, turning scrap metal into collector gold. Viewers first met him on Fast and Loud, standing alongside Richard Rawlings, trading rare finds and million-dollar deals with a mix of swagger and sincerity. But long before television, Dennis was already the guy insiders called when they needed the impossible. A rare Shelby, a one-of-one Hemi, a Jeep prototype no one else could trace. His name became synonymous with integrity, expertise, and a certain Texan charm that turned grease and grit into gold. Collinsboro's Jeep wasn't just a shop. It was a museum of American automotive history. Inside, row after row of perfectly restored Jeeps stood like soldiers at attention. Beyond that, tucked behind the public showroom, were private warehouses holding cars worth more than most people's lifetime earnings. Rumors circulated for years that Dennis had prototypes no manufacturer ever admitted existed. Pieces of history too valuable to sell, too sensitive to display. That's why when police lights painted the corrugated walls red and blue, fans refused to believe the headlines. What could possibly be illegal inside a shop that had helped preserve so much of the automotive past? But in recent years, some had whispered about the hidden side of the collection. Unregistered imports, classified blueprints, and secret restoration projects for private collectors. Dennis always brushed it off with a grin, saying, "If it's history, I'll find it, fix it, and make it run again." Now that very obsession, the one that made him famous, was about to put him under investigation. And by the time police pried open the first locked bay, even his closest friends would admit they had never seen what lay inside. It started with a single alarm. At 9:46 p.m., the Wiley Police Department received a call from a neighboring business owner reporting flashing lights and smoke near the back of the Collinsboro's Jeep facility. Within minutes, a second call came from a passerby who claimed to hear a bang like metal rupturing. Dispatch records later confirmed multiple sensors triggered simultaneously. A rare event for a system known to be state-of-the-art. The first officers to arrive expected a break-in or an electrical malfunction. But when they opened the rear service door, the air hit them like a wall. Thick, chemical, and suffocating. A faint haze hovered above the shop floor, illuminated by the flashlights sweeping through the darkness. The usual scent of oil and old leather was replaced by something sharp, almost caustic. "Get Hazmat," one officer muttered into his radio. "We've got something burning that isn't burning." When firefighters arrived, they quickly isolated the source. Not a blaze, but a set of containers in the corner of the restoration bay, hissing faintly. The labels were charred, but one still read, "Do not open, fuel prototype." Within the hour, the building was cleared. Emergency lights flickered across polished chrome fenders and shattered glass, casting eerie reflections that made the entire shop look like a ghost town of forgotten cars. What unsettled investigators most wasn't the chemicals or even the damage. It was the pattern of how everything had been arranged. The crates, the cables, the ventilation ducts. It looked intentional, methodical, almost like a controlled environment. Someone had been running experiments in here, and that someone knew exactly what they were doing. By 11 p.m., the site was declared an active hazardous investigation. Fire crews stood down, replaced by plainclothes officers and men in gloves carrying evidence kits. They expected to find a busted pipe or a bad batch of fuel. What they were about to uncover, however, pointed to something else entirely. Something that had been sealed away for decades. Behind the main shop floor, investigators found a large steel door welded shut from the inside. It was unusual. No hinges, no visible lock, just seams sealed with fresh bead lines and paint thick enough to hide their age. One officer noted scorch marks along the lower frame, as if it had been exposed to heat or pressure at some point. They brought in cutting tools and started slicing through the welds. As sparks flew, the smell of burned metal mixed with the lingering scent of chemicals. When the final strip gave way, the door fell inward with a heavy clang, and a rush of cold, stagnant air poured out. Inside was a chamber that didn't belong in a repair shop. Industrial shelving lined the walls, each level stacked with wooden crates marked only by handwritten decades. 50s customs, 60s muscle, 70s prototypes, European imports. Between them sat a half-dozen barrels, one of which had tipped over and leaked a shimmering liquid across the floor. An officer bent down and read the label on a half-melted sticker. Experimental fuel. Do not store indoors. The light from their flashlights caught something else. Rows of security cameras mounted in the corners, all wired to a server, still humming quietly in the corner. Someone had been monitoring this room remotely. The feed was active until minutes before the alarms went off. Whatever happened here wasn't random. It was precise, controlled, protected. When police reviewed the footage later, they'd find something even more disturbing. The last file saved on the system had been overwritten exactly 10 minutes before the alarm was triggered. someone had tried to erase what happened inside this bay. And the deeper investigators went into the maze of crates and barrels, the clearer it became. This wasn't a burglary scene. This was a cover-up, one that had gone very, very wrong. When officers finally started cataloging what they'd found in the sealed bay, they realized this wasn't just a warehouse. It was a private vault of automotive history. Each crate revealed something rarer than the last. A 1967 Shelby GT 500 coated in dust, but wearing its original export-only badging. A Jeep CJ10 prototype, once rumored lost after government testing in the 1980s. And beneath a tarp in the corner, a Porsche 959 shell with no VIN tag. Its frame painted matte black, as if someone had tried to erase its identity. Investigators called in the state's auto theft task force to verify ownership. Every time they ran a serial number, another anomaly appeared. Some vehicles were listed as destroyed, others marked as non-importable prototypes. Several were never documented in public records at all. Even seasoned officers, many of them lifelong gearheads, admitted they'd never seen anything like it. One of them later said, "It was like stepping into a time capsule built by someone who didn't want history to end." The collection stretched deep into the shadows. Dozens of vehicles crammed bumper to bumper. Some carried faded inventory tags from defunct dealerships. Others had military export stickers. The smell of old oil mixed with aging upholstery created an atmosphere equal parts sacred and suspicious. Word spread fast. By dawn, social media was alive with speculation. Secret government cars, black market storage, maybe even prototypes from private collectors avoiding taxes or tariffs. Fans of Dennis Collins refused to believe it. "He's the most honest guy in the business," one follower wrote online. "If those cars are there, he's protecting them, not hiding them." But as the morning sun crept through the year garage skylights, one fact was undeniable. These weren't the vehicles the public knew about. These were ghosts. Cars that weren't supposed to exist, sitting quietly behind a welded door for reasons no one could yet explain. And for investigators, that meant one thing. Whatever was happening inside Collinsboro's Jeep was far bigger than a routine break-in. By the following afternoon, unmarked government SUVs lined the street outside Collinsboro's Jeep. Federal agents from Homeland Security and Customs Enforcement joined the case, citing possible import and customs irregularities. What began as a local hazmat response had turned into a federal investigation overnight. Inside the building, agents cross-referenced vehicle numbers, scanned barcodes, and bagged documents by the box. Several of the crates contained incomplete paperwork, old auction records, and import stamps from ports that hadn't existed for decades. It looked less like criminal activity and more like someone had been archiving history, quietly and without permission. Rumors spread like wildfire. Some claimed the cars were part of a secret government collection that Dennis had been restoring off the record. Others swore he was storing vehicles for wealthy clients who didn't want them registered publicly. A former employee told reporters, Dennis was a perfectionist. He wanted to save cars people had given up on, even if it meant breaking a few rules to do it. But one discovery shifted the entire tone of the investigation. In the far corner of the bay, under a hydraulic lift, agents found a metal hatch cut into the concrete. It was barely visible beneath layers of grease and tire marks. The weld seams looked recent. When an officer tapped the edge with his boot, the hollow echo made everyone in the room pause. "That's not storage," one detective said, quietly. "That's access." Crews moved in with drills and flashlights. As the bolts came free and the hatch creaked open, a wave of cool, dry air rushed up from below. A ladder descended into the dark. Nobody knew what was waiting down there. But from that moment forward, The investigation was no longer about stolen cars or missing paperwork. It was about whatever Dennis Collins had been keeping beneath them. The vault beneath the garage was small, silent, and far older than the concrete above it suggested. Its walls were lined with humidity-sealed shelves filled with rolled documents, film canisters, and small metal tubes. The air smelled faintly of paper and rust. At first glance, it looked like a forgotten storage cellar, until agents started opening the containers. Inside one metal cylinder, they found bundles of burned cash fused together by heat. The edges were charred, but the center still bore faded serial numbers from the early 1980s. Next to it lay an envelope of black and white photographs, drag strips, garages, and race cars marked with the stamp Confidential. Chrysler Division, 1983. Another shelf held blueprints for engines and vehicle frames labeled Concept, Prototype, Do Not Copy. Some were hand-drawn, others typewritten, all marked with initials and signatures that read like a roll call of Detroit legends. And then came the most shocking find. A steel box engraved with the words, "For future display only." Inside were racing badges, faded contracts, and letters referencing private builds funded outside corporate record. The implication was staggering. Someone had been preserving the paper trail of an underground racing syndicate that once operated beyond official sanction. When agents surfaced, the garage fell silent. Reporters shouted questions from the perimeter, but no one spoke a word. The evidence was bagged, sealed, and hauled into unmarked vehicles before dawn. For years, car enthusiasts had joked that Dennis Collins knew more about automotive history than the museums did. That night, it stopped being a joke. Whatever was hidden under that lift didn't just connect him to the past. It connected him to a chapter of American speed that was never meant to see daylight. By morning, the story had exploded across every automotive forum and social feed in the country. Drone footage showed yellow tape circling Collins Brothers' Jeep like a crime scene, and reporters camped outside the gate, waiting for the man at the center of it all to speak. When Dennis Collins finally emerged, dressed in his usual jeans and work shirt, the crowd went silent. "There's no crime here," he said firmly. "No conspiracy. I keep cars, records, and prototypes for restoration research. That vault was built to protect irreplaceable history, not to hide it." His voice was steady, but his eyes betrayed exhaustion. He refused to take questions about the sealed bay or the barrels of experimental fuel, saying only, "Those were industrial storage mistakes, not evidence of wrongdoing." Reporters pressed harder. "Were you storing vehicles for private clients? Are those cars stolen?" Dennis didn't flinch. "Every car in this building was saved from the scrap heap. I've spent my life rescuing what others threw away." Police later confirmed that no arrests were made. The investigation was ongoing, though several seized documents had already been returned. Federal agents left quietly before noon. Still, online speculation grew. Was he covering for someone? Or had Dennis stumbled into history so deep it frightened people in high places? Insiders hinted that the real mystery wasn't the missing paperwork or the vault. It was what Dennis had been trying to protect. A former associate said, "He's always talked about preserving the untold side of American car culture. The experiments, the failures, the stuff the corporations buried. Maybe that's what he found." As the sun rose over Wiley, Dennis walked back into the garage alone. Behind him, the door shut with a hollow clang. And whatever secret still lay inside stayed in the dark. 2 days later, detectives combing through the vehicle manifests made a startling discovery. One car listed in Dennis's records was missing. A 1970 Hemi Cuda convertible. Factory plum-crazy purple. 4-speed manual. One of only a handful ever built. Its estimated worth? Over $3 million. It wasn't among the cars impounded, nor was it accounted for in shipping logs or insurance records. Surveillance footage from the night of the incident revealed something strange. At 9:31 p.m., just 15 minutes before police arrived, a rollback truck was seen pulling away from the property, carrying a tarp-covered vehicle. The license plate was obscured. Detectives began to suspect someone inside the operation had been tipped off. If the missing car was indeed the Cuda, it meant whoever removed it knew exactly what was about to unfold. Calls to nearby towing companies yielded nothing. The truck and the car vanished into thin air. When pressed for comment, Dennis only said, "I don't discuss clients' cars publicly," but his tone suggested surprise, maybe even betrayal. Whispers spread through the collector world. The Cuda wasn't just valuable, it was historic. Allegedly tied to an old Chrysler racing experiment from the early 70s. Some said the vehicle contained unique engine modifications, possibly related to the same experimental fuel found on site. Investigators circled back to the vault. Could the blueprints and cash have financed this missing car's creation decades ago? Was Dennis protecting evidence of an automotive breakthrough that had been buried by corporations years before? Whatever the answer, the missing Cuda was the final puzzle piece, and the key to unlocking what really happened inside Collins Brothers' Jeep. Weeks later, the truth emerged quietly through an internal report leaked to the media. The so-called experimental fuel found in the drums wasn't illegal at all. It was a volatile ethanol-based blend used in early NASCAR tests during the 1980s. A project abandoned when corporate sponsors pulled out. The paperwork found in Dennis's vault confirmed it. The fuel had been part of a private engineering effort to develop cleaner racing engines decades before it was fashionable. The burned cash? Payments from a now-defunct racing syndicate that funded those secret builds off the record. The missing Hemi Cuda? A prototype test car rumored to be one of the last surviving pieces from that era, quietly removed by a private collector before the police arrived. In the end, no charges were filed. The site was reclassified not as a crime scene, but as an uncontrolled historical archive. Investigators concluded that Dennis Collins had inadvertently become the caretaker of forgotten automotive experiments, relics from a time when speed meant secrecy. When reporters returned for a follow-up, Dennis stood in the same spot outside his shop and smiled faintly. "Sometimes history hides in the paperwork," he said, "and sometimes it hides under a layer of dust." Inside the now quiet shop, he brushed soot off a steering wheel resting on a workbench. The camera caught his reflection in the polished chrome, tired but proud. "They came looking for a crime," he murmured. But all they found was the past trying to breathe again. Engines roared to life in the background, echoing through the bay as sunlight broke through the shop windows. The investigation was closed. The legacy reopened.